in 2024, the public voted for change, for an end to Tory chaos, and for a government that would transform their lives. That summer, our government set out a King's Speech to deliver that, and in the past 2 years, in spite of everything, we have begun to make truly transformational changes, like ending no-fault evictions and finally scrapping the two-child benefit cap, things that have changed lives. But today's offering pales in comparison, perhaps because we have already heard so much of it before, but definitely because it lacks the urgency and the radical transformation we need. I don't believe this is the further and faster that we've been hearing so much about. It seems we have put the handbrake on offering change, and we are wasting political capital on divisive measures that weren't even in our manifesto, like ID cards and curtailing the rights of asylum seekers. I do want to be clear that I'm not in any way objecting to the King's Speech. I'm pleased to see measures like the bill on conversion practices, votes at 16, Hillsborough law on candour, tackling anti-Semitism, reforming leaseholds and many other key measures. But why are we not doing more? What is there to shout about? Last week, the electorate sent our party a clear message that they were dissatisfied with government. And I don't believe that this is a King's Speech to inspire them back to us. I don't believe my constituents will hear this and think my life will be better when Labour introduces digital ID or replaces the water regulator and instigates another top-down reform of the NHS. At a time of great turmoil and difficulty, with global uncertainty hitting households in their pockets, people need policies that will ease the financial pressure they are under today. So building on the successes of the last legislative session, and there were successes, I would have liked to see an extension of renters' rights and the introduction of rent controls, especially in major cities where private rents are beyond extortionate. We acknowledge that those living in social housing need their rents capped and regulated, yet we disregard the thousands of low-income households and young people left at the mercy of private rental markets. I'd hoped to see a second employment rights bill announced today. While the first one deserves significant praise, it doesn't go far enough. We need a bill that will restore sectoral collective bargaining, give basic rights to the self-employed and gig economy workers, and commits to greater insourcing. The nationalisation of British Steel is welcome, but this should have been accompanied by the nationalisation of rail, mail, water, energy and other essential services. These are not mere industries, they are lifelines. They should never have been handed over to shareholders, and it's long past time we took them back. I would have liked to see greater acknowledgement on the biggest existential crisis we face as a species, nationally, by reducing the planning burdens on solar farms and on offshore wind. If the government really wants to help people with their energy bills, then we need to be switching to renewables much faster. Internationally, I would have liked to see steps to introduce debt cancellations for climate-vulnerable nations who are fighting the crisis with their hands tied behind their backs. If we want to reduce numbers of people seeking asylum, then we need to be working with allies to tackle the biggest causes of displacement. As the only Labour MP to vote against the Brexit implementation agreement, I was very pleased to see measures on the strengthening of our relationship with the EU. We can now all stop pretending it was in any way a good idea. And watching that disastrous impact that it's had, I feel vindicated. But I would also advise the government that with all of the Henry VIII clauses in that bill, we could do so much more faster. And we could do it in a way that would quickly benefit our nation. I also want to point out that whilst I understand that some things take time, some things are not hard, I would have liked to see steps to address the continued private sale of human remains. At the start of this year, I presented a very simple bill that ought to end the vile practice of human remains, many of which have unknown provenance, being bought and sold by private individuals. It would have been relatively straightforward to end this practice, but the government have no plans to close this loophole and implement it. As I said, I understand that these things take time, but there are some simple things that we could just get done. And I know, and it feels like the government may be inclined to capitulate to the right and row back on some climate goals, but I remind the government that we lost more votes to the left of us than we did to the right of us. And if we carry on doing the bare minimum on climate issues, this could only get worse. So I would have also welcomed strengths, I believe, to strengthen the citizenship rights of children born here or who have grown up here. and addressing the extortionate fees that block these children from becoming citizens. I have raised this again and again in this House just about every single year, and I was guaranteed that there would be some changes on this. I do not like being misled inadvertently or otherwise on issues such as this. Whatever our differences on our views on migration, right across this House, people agree that these children are not migrants, and we continue to treat them like that and price them out of their rights. I also want to acknowledge the cost of living crisis and the fact that there have been measures in this King's Speech to tackle them. But frankly, successive governments have been skirting around this issue for years, making minor tweaks that slightly ease the pressure but don't go far enough. I think it's time to be very bold. It's time to consider the merits of a universal basic income. This is not a radical idea, it's something that I believe is a logical one, because poverty is a political choice. Even at these difficult times, we remain one of the richest countries in the world. So why do we have such a huge cost of living crisis? Why are people skipping meals, rationing heating, working themselves into the ground, doing multiple jobs just to stay afloat? This doesn't happen by accident. It happens because those in power decided it was acceptable. And for the avoidance of doubt, we are the ones in power. The question is not really affordability, it's whether we have the courage and the will to take on such a transformative policy. Because at the moment it feels like we are offering piecemeal change, minor tweaks, while they may be necessary. I don't believe they will excite anyone. They believe they will make the tangible change that we need. Now, I know we can't sell people the world, and systematic changes do need to be made to facilitate reforms. But you cannot solely offer that and then tell people that their lives have been changed, especially not after the very clear message the electorate delivered to us last week. People may call me unrealistic, but I would say that I am ambitious for what we can achieve in government right now and in this parliamentary session. Labour governments have always accompanied radical transformational change in our society. This is the change that the electorate wants. This is the change that we promised them. They made it very clear. And I don't believe this legislative agenda goes far enough to achieve that for them. The public is demanding more, and I believe that we can do more to give them.